everyone, this is Melissa, and on today's episode of that doesn't work for this. Hello everyone, this is Melissa. Thank you so much for clicking onto this video. Today I'm doing something a little bit different for my channel. I usually post Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I have different content like scheduled for each day, but something came up that I found to be really interesting, and that something is this new series that Dawson is doing about Jake Paul, Logan Paul. I don't know anything about these guys. Let me give you a quick rundown of what I'm doing. I'm doing a react video. Formerly, before I became a stay-at-home mom, I was a school guidance counselor, and before that I worked as a teacher, and kind of in between, and before that I've worked as a mental health counselor. So my master's is in mental health counseling, and I've been out of the field for the past 4 years, but it's still something that is very much my passion, something that I enjoy, and something that I find always very interesting. So of course this whole series completely just piqued my interest, and I thought it would be really fun to do a react video to this, because I know that this particular episode is going to have a therapist in it, and she's going to be kind of defining what a sociopath is and that whole thing. So I'm not speaking as a professional counselor in this video or anything like that. I'm just basically going to be doing commentary, sharing my opinions and my thoughts as we go. So I hope you enjoy this video. If you do, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe, because I do post weekly. And let's go ahead and just get started. I've never done a video like this before, so I'm going to put my headphones on so that the audio doesn't conflict. I'm hoping I'll be able to show the video that I'm watching. I'm gonna do like a screen record. I don't know if it's gonna record the audio at the same time, but I'm gonna figure it out. Hopefully we can make it work. Fingers crossed. So with that being said, let's get started. Okay, so this video is sponsored by BetterHelp, which I think is a pretty cool app. I was actually thinking about looking into seeing if I could work from home doing that. Like, as a therapist, I would have to re-register as an intern to eventually... Anyway, let's just move on. I'm gonna skip that a little bit. Oh, this is... They were doing that. That's horrible. It's the scene where he's doing an ambulance prank. This guy is so intense. Like, I have a sense of humor, but my sense of humor is not the same as everyone's, especially like the older I've gotten and after having kids and stuff. But just some things I don't find very funny. Oh, I forgot to say, I've never seen any of these guys before. I've heard about them months and months ago when the whole suicide forest thing happened, but I never watched a video. I never watched any of his videos. I never watched like any of the drama videos about it. I just heard about it because my husband had been telling me about it. But yeah, he doesn't seem very much anything like the kind of YouTuber I would like to watch. He kind of reminds me of back when I was in high school, I think it was, there was this show called Jack, where the guys would just kind of do like these really outlandish sort of stunts and pranks and stuff like that. They were just really obnoxious in my opinion. It just wasn't my cup of tea, and he just kind of seems to be that way. Yeah. I think it's interesting that they keep saying psychopath. Now again, I've been out of the field for like several years now, but if I remember correctly, terms like psychopath, sociopath, and insane, they're legal terms, not terms in mental health or psychology or psychiatry. It's not something you would diagnose someone with. So I'm interested to see what she's gonna say reference that. Oh man. Okay. Oh man. The Uber driver said his wife is a sociopath. That's horrible. So I'm definitely gonna have to like edit and cut because I don't want this video to be as long, if not longer, than his video. So if you see me cutting, it's because I'm cutting to whatever I can actually provide some feedback for. So okay, so there it is. That's what I was hoping for. She mentioned antisocial personality disorder. So it's kind of like a pet peeve of mine because so many people in like everyday language will say, oh, I'm antisocial, just to say that they are kind of like introverted or they don't really like interacting with people or being sociable. But that in a mental health psychology way or term would be called asocial, meaning you're not social. Antisocial is this sort of very extreme personality disorder that is characterized by various symptoms, but I'm sure they're going to talk about it now. But it's very extreme. I mean, you're talking about mass murderers, serial killers, people like Jeffrey Dahmer. That is antisocial. So if you hear that word or use that word, try using asocial instead, please. But yeah, so notice how she's saying what a clinician would call it would be antisocial personality disorder. Okay, so that book that she has out, that's called The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders. So psychologists, psychiatrists, mental health counselors, social workers, marriage and family therapists. There's actually a whole variety of professionals that work under like the umbrella of what is considered mental health, and they all use that book as a reference for diagnosing whether it's personality disorders, mood disorders, anything of that nature. So that's what that book is for. Now when it comes to actually diagnosing someone as having, let's say, antisocial personality disorder, there's a whole section in the book that you can refer to, and it will list all the criteria that they have to meet. Now I don't have the DSM-5, that's what we call it for short, DSM, because like I said, I haven't been working in the field for the past four years, so I don't have that book. But basically something, I'm sure she's explained a lot more, but because of time they had to edit like some things out. But to be diagnosed as whether it's antisocial personality disorder, borderline, whatever it may be, you have to meet a certain number of criteria. So that's not to say that you have to like have every single symptom on that list to be antisocial, but it's a certain amount. So usually the DSM will tell you how many symptoms have to be present in order to actually be diagnosed as that. So it might be 4, 5, or 6, it depends on each disorder. But so that's what she's going through right now with him. So something else that's kind of interesting when it comes to personality disorders, I remember learning this when I was in school for this. People with personality disorders, they don't hurt themselves. Like, they're not the ones suffering, kind of like what she's talking about with antisocial. They're very manipulative and controlling and just very selfish and self-serving, and they completely lack empathy, or in other words, like, empathy is just the ability to like feel what another person's feeling, you know, like that emotional intelligence, you know. So people with personality disorders, whether it's antisocial, borderline, any of the other ones, they don't realize it, but they're not the ones hurting, they're hurting everyone else. And then on the other side of that, people with mood disorders like anxiety and depression, etc., they feel the brunt of the pain and all that versus the people around them. The people around them don't. It's like the opposite. So anyway, I think that's really interesting and kind of in line with what she's talking about with antisocial personality disordered people and how they use others and the whole thing. I think it's really cool how intuitive she is as to kind of guessing how antisocial personality disorder would relate to someone who's a YouTuber. So like when she's talking about how they would relate to their fans and actually be really nice to them because of what they can get out of them. That's something that I wouldn't really have thought of. I wouldn't have known that. So I think that that's pretty interesting, but it obviously just really makes sense when it comes to this particular kind of person and how they are just trying to get something out of people, you know? So that's crazy, capitalizing on someone dying, committing suicide, that kind of thing, just for attention, for money, for views. Pretty intense. That goes to show you, like, there's a line, right? In society, right, we may not all agree on everything. There's always going to be disagreements when it comes to certain things, but there's like certain basic societal lines that we just kind of all know not to cross. And when it comes to people who, whether they're antisocial or there's other things it could be too, I'm sure she's going to bring it up at some point. It may not just be antisocial, it could be narcissistic personality disorder. There's also something called histrionic, which is similar as well. So there's various things that it can be, but a lot of these people just, they don't see those lines. It's so, I wonder where Shane gets like all these little clips that he adds in, like the people who are acting like pantomimes and stuff like that. It's just, it's edited really nicely, like beyond the actual content that I'm like really into right now. Just knowing that he films this, he plans this, he films it, he comes up with the whole like structure of what he wants the video to be or the whole series to be, and lays it all out, and then takes the time to film it and then edit it very intentionally, like with music, with clips, with lots of symbolism and all kinds of stuff. Like you could tell that he's passionate about what he's doing, he's smart, he's artistic, he cares about it, and not just about the video itself, like the content of the video, like Jake Paul, the mind of Jake Paul, but also just the filmography of it too, you know, like just everything about it, the way he produces and directs it. He's very talented, and this is not to like blow smoke or anything like that. I doubt he'll see this video, but it's just really cool because I haven't been watching him all that long. I first saw his video when he did that video with Trisha, because I've been watching Trisha for like maybe the past 6 months, almost a year. I think I started watching her around Christmas time, so more than 6 months. So when they did the video together and I saw it, that's when I first saw Shane, and then I binged and watched a bunch of his videos and stuff. And I really like how his content has changed and it's so meaningful right now, and he's just taking it to a whole nother level and just being really artistic with it, and it's just so cool. I wish more people would do that. Like, yeah, I wish more people would grow. The other thing that's really interesting is how Shane is like, oh, that characteristic or that symptom makes me think of some people in my life. And something I really want to share is when you're studying personality disorders or just mental health in general, I remember very distinctly in a class a professor saying, you're going to read about all these symptoms and learn about all these disorders, and you're going to think you're going to have 1, 2, 3, or maybe all of them. And that's normal, because some of these things can be normal or normative, you know, not just because you display a little bit of this one line, right? A little narcissistic or a little self-absorbed or a little whatever it may be, doesn't mean you have a full-blown disorder. So almost everyone in the population has what we would call a subclinical level of one of the personality disorders, or maybe one of the mood disorders. But that subclinical means it's normative, it's not impeding your everyday life or function. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be medicated or need to partake in therapy, although therapy is a great thing, and I think just about everyone would benefit from therapy at some point in their lives. But yeah, you have to kind of keep that in mind. Just because you or someone may hit the criteria for some of these things doesn't mean that they're a full-fledged whatever it may be, right? So, but it's just interesting to see him doing one of those. That's so creepy. When I think quite some time has passed since I've said anything. I had to pause the video and just wait until there's something that I wanted to say that was sort of meaningful that I haven't already said, because like I said, I don't want this video to be 40 minutes long. But it's interesting here when she talks about how YouTube is the playing ground for people who are either have antisocial personality disorder, maybe narcissism, histrionic. She didn't say that, I'm adding that. Or also online dating sites, because they can, or apps, they can see exactly what it is you want in a person and just kind of pretend to be that. Very creepy. Thank God I'm not doing that anymore. See, like that whole thing right there about moving quickly and ask you to date and move in or get married and have kids and the whole thing. Like, I can think of certain people who are like very impulsive, or they can be very emotional, or can be a little manipulative. I can't say that word. Manipulative. But that doesn't mean that they have antisocial personality disorder. That just means they might have a subclinical level of that, or maybe something else. Like for me personally, I distinctly remember when I was learning about personality disorders, particularly identifying with borderline, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it, I think I have borderline personality disorder. But the truth is, I really don't. I don't meet all the criteria, and I only have like little flavors of certain things, which, probably makes me sound really bad, but it's just the reality. Everyone's got like a little bit of something when you read about it. And to say that you're perfect and you don't have anything is a total and complete lie, and just shows that you do. Yeah, so that's really interesting where she says that Shane is very empathetic, or is an empath, and that's the one thing that makes me realize I don't have borderline personality disorder. I am super empathetic, which is part of the reason why I was always into the field of counseling and education, and that whole thing, like just wanting to help people in any way, shape, or form, no matter what it is I do, even in my YouTube videos. If I can help people, if like the purpose somehow can be shaped around helping people, then I feel like I'm working in my purpose, because when you're an empath, you kind of want to help people, which is exactly what Shane is. Okay, so if the angle changed, I'm sorry, I don't know, my camera turned off, but I still have battery, so I don't know. So what was I saying? So you have genetics, but there's also this concept called nature versus nurture. So you may have the genetic makeup deep down inside in your DNA to have anything. It could be schizophrenia, it could be bipolar, borderline, antisocial, narcissistic personality disorder, histrionic, etc. But some of that may not ever even manifest itself in your life if you have the right environment around you. So that being said, sometimes, trauma in childhood, bad parenting, sexual assault, abuse, whether it's physical or psychological abuse, extreme bullying and harassment, any of that can lead to the manifestation of some of these personality disorders. So that's the part that makes me sad. The fact that the environment itself can either cause it or repress it. That's something to be said about like humanity in general, you know? And how like what we can do to help nip that in the bud from a very early age. Yeah, so I like when he asked what would happen if they went to therapy, and she said probably nothing. This kind of person, like to electively go to therapy is huge. It's hard for anybody. Like if you're struggling in your marriage or struggling just in your personal life or at work, it's so hard for the average person to go to therapy. Imagine someone like this, a sociopath or antisocial personality or histrionic, narcissistic, whatever, right? It's practically impossible. I think the only time they would go is if there's like a court mandate for them to go. Maybe they were arrested and part of their probation is that they have to participate in some kind of counseling. But because they are master manipulators, they would just take whatever skills and techniques the therapist is teaching them when it comes to communicating and relating to others, and just find a way to learn new methods of manipulation, basically. Kind of like addicts. Addicts are also master manipulators. Look how she's smiling. Me da cosa. I just, in Spanish, I said, ooh, it gives me like the chills. You see, so I'm hoping I'm able to put the clips in as I'm talking, but that was this lady in prison who is being interviewed, and he's asking about what, you know, killing, and if she had the opportunity, would she do it again? And she's like, absolutely, basically. And she just smiles, like no remorse, no shame, just cocky about it. I just remembered something. I remember my professor telling us that when it comes to antisocial personality disorder, I believe it was Freud, who's considered the father of psychology, right? He classified this personality disorder before it was called antisocial as, or he called people with this soulless, like they had no soul, they had no scruples, no morals, no remorse, no empathy. I mean, it's some pretty bleak stuff. I don't know if that's what Jake Paul really has, because I think he'd be much more violent, but I mean, I don't know anything about his videos. Some of the things that I've seen, some of the clips of like him putting people in danger is pretty intense. So maybe, but I don't know. I don't know if he'd kill somebody. Make it look good, please. I think that's interesting. She was saying how his eyes are blank, like he doesn't show emotion in his eyes. And I believe that's considered flat affect. It just, you don't really show any emotion. You might be saying you're sorry, or you feel bad, or you feel a certain way, but like this is kind of like dead. And it's always kind of like a creepy thing. I think earlier she talked about when you're interacting with people like this, you kind of get like this feeling like something's off, something's not all there with this person. Some people actually never pick up on that kind of thing, especially I guess maybe if you're younger. Thankfully, other people have like this intuitive, like interpersonal intelligence where they can like automatically see something's off with this person, and they just kind of stay away. And there's something to be said about having that. It's very protective. Yeah, I think it's interesting that they're kind of sort of trying to diagnose him with this. I'm sure at some point she must have said, like, technically you can't diagnose someone you're not even working with, and it wouldn't be appropriate because that's a violation of HIPAA. But it's just the twist for the video and the whole series, I'm sure, to like dive into his mind and see, what's going on there. Is he a sociopath? What's going on with him? But he's definitely not the kind of person I'm interested in watching. I think it's narcissistic personality disorder. I don't know. Yeah, that's such a great point about like interviewing people who are no longer in his life, because people right now that are still his friends are under his manipulation or control, but people who are no longer his friends or associated with him are going to have more meaningful things to say, reference why aren't they talking to him anymore, I think she brings up a really interesting point. I'm glad she's talking about childhood trauma and how it relates to all of this, and teaching children how to communicate their emotions. Like, we may not be able to help them, or anyone, right, change the circumstances around them. Like, we can't really change who their parents are, or who their family is, or anything like that, but we can help them communicate the way that they feel and be empathetic and understanding, and help them sort of process it, be able to share it and validate it. Like, so many times people want to say, don't be mad, don't be sad, don't cry, stop crying, and that's not helpful, that's not healthy, that does absolutely nothing to help them cope and understand what it is they're feeling. It's okay to feel the way that you feel, whether or not you agree as a parent, as a teacher, as a whatever. You're entitled to your feelings and your emotions, and the adults that surround children, in whatever capacity it may be, family, teachers, acquaintances, you should just be there to like nurture and support and help guide them to cope with their feelings in a healthy way, even as early as age 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, obviously. See that right there when Shane's talking about like his mom and being strong for her and the whole thing, like legit. See, this is where the whole empath things comes into play. Like, I feel something, and it's hard to explain. Like, sometimes my mind goes so much faster than what my mouth can articulate, but I genuinely feel what he feels, like sadness and like weight, heaviness. And to me, it's really heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking, and I think it's so important. I mean, I can't imagine at all whatsoever what it must be like to have your spouse leave you, or be in a position where you have to leave your spouse for whatever reason it may be, and raise your kids or kid completely on your own. It's a single parent. I can't fathom what that's like. But at the same time, because of what I've learned and what I know, you can't put the burden of strength and of the burden of relying on your kid to be your rock and your shield and your strength. That should not go on them. A kid needs to be a kid, That's where you have to learn to confide in another adult, give an adult that place. If you can't afford therapy, one of the few places you can go to get free therapy and counseling is go to a church. Get involved in a church. Pastors do free therapy all the time, and they're really great at it. They're very empathetic and understanding, and that's one resource. A lot of therapists also have what's called a sliding scale, so based off of your income, they'll adjust their prices. So that's an option too, if that's like not for you. There's other support groups, if your spouse was an alcoholic or a drug addict, there's something called Al-Anon. So it's for the family of alcoholics, and that's free. So there's always resources, I know in Miami there's a phone number you can call. It's 211, and it's sort of like 411, but for social services. So I'm sure throughout the US it should be applicable, and if you're in another country, just Google and see where you can call for that kind of thing. But like, now I feel sad. I just love what he said right there. I'm gonna have to wrap this up because this video is really long, but he said, I can't help others. How can I help others if I can't help myself? Something like that. He just said, I'm paraphrasing. But the truth is you can't. You know, you cannot, even as a therapist, the first thing that they teach you is you're not in the business of changing other people. You're in the business of helping people who want to help themselves. And that's such a powerful thing. And I noticed that working in like private practice and also community mental health. So like people who elected to go to therapy versus people who had to go to therapy. And there's just such a big difference in the mindset and the motivation and the desire to change. Like if that's not there, there's practically nothing you can do aside from just be a good influence and offer good advice. You know, in a world where a lot of people don't give very good advice, try to give good advice. But that burden of helping people change, that burden belongs to that person. You know what I mean? Like, I'm responsible to make me change, to make me a better human. And Shane's responsible to make himself a better human. And in so doing, he'll be a better friend, and he can be salt and light and encouragement and, you know, an inspiration to the people around him. And that's the way to do it, basically. See, he says the more he's helping people, the worse he gets. So he said, like, this feels like it's going to be a breaking point. Maybe it'll be good. Like, this may be very cathartic for him. Let's see what he says. So he said maybe, essentially he's saying maybe this will be good in that for me to realize that I cannot help him and that he needs to go to therapy himself. And I think he already knows that. He's a smart guy. Therapy to YouTuber. He's awesome. That's serious. "500 parts. A series of a therapist fixing him." That's not how it works, but okay. What's interesting is like I'm going to second guess every person I meet. It's kind of like I said before. Everyone might have like certain flavors of the different personality disorders, but it doesn't mean they are full-fledged antisocial or whatever it may be. So I mean, just like me, you know, I have certain flavors of certain disorders, but I'm not a full-fledged anything, thank God. And I'm constantly working on myself, listening to self-empowerment books, parenting books, taking sort of a inventory of myself and how I can improve. Sometimes a little hard on myself, but someone's gotta be. Part 3, understanding the family. That's, yeah, I don't know what's happening there. Who's he kissing? Who's that? Was that his daughter? What is that? I don't know. Okay, so the video ended. Hopefully I wasn't talking too low because the kids are sleeping and stuff, but yeah, I feel like I'm sure I talked a lot. This one and only clip was 20 minutes, and I think the other one was like 30. God, I don't know how I'm gonna edit this. So with that being said, this is a very interesting series for sure. I will not be subscribing to Jake or Logan Paul. Not really interested in it. I'm interested in Shane's video, so I want to see what he plans on doing with it. Like, what's the spin? What's the catch? Like, what's the resolution? What's happening here? And what did he learn? That's what I'm interested in. And what is, yeah. Okay. So that being said, I think this is an awesome video. If you haven't seen it, I'll link it below so you can give it a watch. I'll also link my counseling playlist. The stuff that I've uploaded has been more like school-based counseling, how to pick a career and how to study. I haven't really posted anything like that recently. I've kind of changed my content to be more in line with like what my life is like now. So if you're interested, make sure you subscribe and like the video. And thank you so much for watching. Until next time, goodbye.